I happened to be on Fox Business yesterday morning in the wake of the Las Vegas massacre, and so I became part of what's really become a media ritual dealing with the shock and the horror and, yes, the resignation of another mass shooting, this one now being called the deadliest mass shooting in United States history. I mean, the idea that one guy with a bunch of guns could fire at will on a crowd from a hotel room is still kind of hard to grasp. And as we kind of struggle for the answers, and the information is always incomplete in the beginning. We don't know much about the shooter's motivation. We didn't know exactly what the death toll would turn out to be. It kept climbing, of course. I had to confront questions about, is this the new normal? Have journalists, the public, local officials all become kind of inured to the fact that this is going to be a regular feature of our lives? We can all talk about ways to minimize these incidents. Certainly, America has stepped up the efforts against terrorism. But when you have these lone wolf attacks where it just takes a guy with a truck, a guy with a semi-automatic weapon, it is difficult to protect every public space. And it made me flash back to all of the different tragedies that I have covered. I mean, going back to Columbine and Sandy Hook, of course, and Virginia Tech, and there was one here at the Washington Navy Yard, and the church in Charleston, South Carolina, and Orlando, and San Bernardino, and of course Sandy Hook in Newtown, Connecticut. And just a few months ago, across the river here, the Virginia baseball field where Congressman Steve Scalise was nearly killed. He just came back to Congress last week. Other people wounded as well. And the Gabby Gifford shooting in Tucson. I mean, as I remember them. And the one thing I have said consistently, and I said this on the air, and I wrote this on Twitter, and boy, did I get it barraged with criticism, is that let's wait a few hours a day for the country to mourn, to grieve, to know the story of what happened before we start getting into the partisan politics. And in this case, I said, perhaps it would have been better if Hillary Clinton and other Democrats had not immediately gone online and made a push for gun control. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have a gun control debate. It's an extremely important issue in this country in light of this kind of violence. Doesn't look like a Republican Congress is going to do anything on that score, but it's an important debate to have. I took the same position after the Gabby Gifford shooting. I defended Sarah Palin for putting out a political map, and she was unfairly blamed for somehow being tied to this deranged gunman in Arizona. And I've criticized both right and left for immediately jumping to, okay, let's score political points. There's just a major tragedy. Let's exploit it. I'm not saying wait a week, a month, a day, while victims' families are still grieving, while still learning of the condition of their loved ones. It seems like a reasonable request to make. But this, too, is part of the ritual, just as journalists scramble to find out what happened, and there are briefings and press conferences by local officials, and we all try to get our heads around the latest horrible tragedy and at the same time go on with our daily lives. Naturally, at the White House press briefing, reporters asked about gun control and the president's position. Would he change his position? There's plenty of time to have that debate. It is with immense sadness that I even talk about this, because I think we're all tired and anguished about what keeps happening in this country. But at the same time, honesty compels me to say there's no easy answers. But if we could just tone down the politicization on both sides, I think that would be better for everyone.